welcome to my tutorial on how to sew this cute Valentine's Day dress sewn with the Yoalli and Koli pattern as a hack. My Instagram is delabeja and you can find the links to the patterns in the description of this video. I'm going to cut out all the pattern pieces now. For this dress I used the Koli skirt and the top from the Yoalli dress without the back pieces. Suitable fabrics for this project are woven fabrics. I'm now using a linen viscose fabric here. For the bow straps, I cut out 4 strips of 10 x 50 centimeters each. We also need the lining. For this I use a simple cotton fabric. I cut out the parts for the Yoalli dress top except for the back. Here we see all pattern pieces, the parts from the lining and main fabric, and the Koli skirt with the flounce, and these are the straps. I reinforced the straps with interfacing to make them a bit more stable and so that the bows come out a little bit better, and I also interfaced the outer edges of the back pattern parts for the top. This is where the eyelets will go with the lacing. And the first thing we sew is the bodice. Don't forget to leave one side open for the zipper. That is, now we only sew 3 seams each. One for the lining and one's for the main fabric. I then like to finish the lower edge of the top. And then I also top stitch all the seam allowances again nicely from the right side so that everything lies smoothly. This is what it looks like in the end. The bottom is nicely finished and the seam allowances are all flat. For the lining as well. Here again from the wrong side. On one side I decided on my right one, it remains open for the zipper as I said, but now we make the straps, and for this we put all 4 pattern pieces together lengthwise. And just sew them up. I'm using my overlock now, but of course you can also do that with your normal sewing machine. I then also sew the edges on each side a bit rounded. And then we turn the whole thing inside out and iron it once. Now we can put the straps on the top. Once at the front of the seams and then at the back, where the eyelets will come later. And the lining on top, and then we sew everything together at the top. Always with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Take your time for this. In the middle of the neckline, I let the needle stick. Turn the whole thing around so that this heart-shaped tip comes out much better. Then I sew the back pieces together and cut the seam allowance once in the middle of the sweetheart neckline, just exactly so that when you turn it over, the heart shape comes out very prominently. And then we top stitch the seam allowance to the lining once more. This makes sure that you won't see the lining from the right side at the end. Then iron it. That always makes the whole thing look very neat. That's what it looks like now. Now we put the open edge at the back right sides together to sew it closed. There comes the lacing with the eyelets. We do this for the individual back part as well as for the rest of the top. This is what it should look like, and then we can turn it inside out again and give it a good press. Then I finished the edges. That just makes it easier for me later. And this small surplus is also important, which we still need to sew on the skirt later. This works the same way as with the Koli dress, linked below. And now let's get to the skirt. I've already drawn my slit here, which I'm going to cut now. In any case, make sure that you only cut 1 layer of fabric. For the flounce, we now sew the 2 parts together with a French seam. First, wrong sides facing each other. Then the seam allowance is trimmed. The whole thing is turned over. And then I sew again right sides together so that it looks nice on both sides, because you will see it from both sides at the end. And this is what it looks like. Nice and clean. Now we can put the flounce onto the slit. And then finally sewed on. I also have my own tutorial for the Koli skirt on my YouTube channel, which you can watch, where everything is described slowly. Here you can see how I understitched the seam allowance to the flounce. For the back part of the skirt, we will now work in this elastic between the two notches. But there are also very detailed instructions for this in the tutorial for the Koli skirt. I'll put a link in the description below. I've left that out for now. This is what it looks like afterwards. Then we can already put the top onto the skirt. Don't forget that the open edges where the zipper is attached must always match. And now you also see why it was necessary to leave the surplus on the bodice, because we're going to sew in the skirt so that you don't see the transition at the end. That's exactly what it looks like now. And next we can sew in the zipper. I'm using an invisible zipper for this. Of course, you can also use a different zipper, but I think this looks most beautiful and is also the easiest. If you have an invisible zipper foot, it makes the whole thing super easy and fast. I simply sew both sides with a straight stitch and fold up the seam allowance of the bodice, so I can hide them later. Then I just sew the skirt closed. Next, I finished the hem of the flounce with a rolled hem foot. But of course you can also use a different hem depending on how you prefer to do it. I like to sew the hem of the skirt with my fishing line technique. For this, I also linked the tutorial in the description. I fixed the lining with a straight stitch to the main fabric just below the waist seam. And finally, I hammer in 3 eyelets each at the back for the lacing. I saved the ribbon myself from the same fabric, but of course you can also use a purchased ribbon. And now I have taken 3 eyelets, but theoretically you can also use more or less, even if you want to. Then I just pull the ribbon through the lacing, and on the side we have the zipper to make it easier to get in. I think this makes the fit just perfect, and the dress is super comfortable. And this is the result. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, just write a comment, like the video, and check out my Instagram for more sewing inspiration and patterns. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!